Hello?
What's up, girl? What happened after Tony dumped you?
Girl, I'm over it. I went from heartbreak to hate.
Boy, Joy,
Hi, Bob.
how's life?
Life is lifing. It doesn't work as well for life, but if you've heard on like TikTok how they'll say the math ain't mathing. No, you haven't. That's not a thing. It's only on my side. Okay, that's fine. Just leave me out here by myself.
There are many different sides to TikTok.
There are many different sides, but
lifing.
well, nobody does the lifing. I tried a thing and it didn't work. But I'm saying like
okay.
if like something doesn't add up, like they'll be like the math ain't mathing, and you haven't heard that in a TikTok.
So like
before?
the pod ain't podcasting.
yeah, like that.
Okay, I got it.
I try.
I'm a couple years older than Joy, so sometimes she's gotta speak to me like I'm one of those people.
Don't even do it. Don't even try.
I'm not hip and cool like I used to be,
I knew
folks.
you were going there and just tried to stop you, and you still went. That's fine.
If it wasn't self-deprecation, would it be the podcast? So before we get into today's podcast, I would like to. Why don't you tell the youngins at home what you've been into, what you've been doing lately? You've been doing something. On your YouTube.
Oh!
Hint, hint.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cause now that the kids will know that we do not practice these things in advance.
No, not at all. Well, like anybody listens to the show and thinks we like have a script.
Not at all. No. I don't think anybody thinks
no.
that. But I started putting meditations up on my YouTube channel.
Fun.
So I have 2 different ones, and you might know the person who helped me come up with the music tracks for those.
Humble brag. Don't know who you're talking about.
Right. So Bob and I together are the Foxy Blonde Black Belts. And we came up with 2 different tracks for 2 different meditations, which the first one is cute and it's wonderful, but the second one that I did is the one I'm the most proud of because it is called I've Had It. So like when they piss you off at work and you have had it, this is the meditation for you. I'm proud of both meditations because they're only like 5 minutes, so you can't tell me you don't have time.
Right.
But the I've Had It one, you start from anger. You start with a lot of hands, movements, and then we'll slow you down and get you
throwing hands, as the kids say.
You will be throwing hands.
It's an interesting meditation music. The first one we did was very light, airy, very meditation. The second one was like the flight of the bumblebee. It's kind of frantic. If you don't know what that is, I don't even know if that's right.
I don't even know that. I don't think that's right, but I knew what you meant.
Okay.
But
flight of some kind of animal.
Yeah. Right. But it is. It's very crazy. And you're like, what? And then there's this crash that happens. And then we get kind of ethereal with it. So.
Yeah, a good way to get rid of some of your anger and, just get it out there.
Yeah, so if you
release it,
if you need to meditate, just look for "I've Had It" by Joy Brownridge. And I don't have a strong army or anything, but it's really just for anybody that's interested. I'm not trying to be a superstar by any means.
She's not a licensed meditationarier.
That's right. I don't have my certification.
She doesn't have a certification. She's not a doctor in meditation, as apparently you have to have that. But
I'm just a 12-year practitioner.
She's just been doing it longer than any Becky out on the YouTube. So just give it a look and get some relaxation, get some anger relaxation, because I don't feel like anybody's out there doing that.
Right. Nobody is. Everybody's like
I've seen people be like, if you're, you want meditation, go get some fried chicken. Like, anger means go eat something, but this is actually anger meditation. Yeah. And it's a thing.
And I look forward to doing more unique ones. So.
Yes. Like toilet meditation. I don't know. We'll get there. We'll figure it out. So this episode is an informational episode. decided we were going to call it My Informed Life, which
Nice.
I don't know if y'all know, we've been doing that throughout the year, this last year. I mean, we're on the 9th episode, so like we're getting close to actually being a year of just doing it on once a month, which has been kind of crazy, which has been really good because a lot of things have happened in our lives that kind of needed that break. So, and then kind of we're artistic people. We do other things, like we create music, we create meditation videos, so we need time to do things like that. So if you do get sad that you don't hear us that often, you can always re-listen because that helps us out too with algorithms. You can also tell all your friends at your at your fondue parties that you're going to be having soon to listen to this podcast and like get us out there, because even though we've had almost 8,000 listens to our podcast, I feel, and it's worldwide, I feel like we could still be bigger.
We could.
And just because, why not? Because we're we are we. So
Can we make that our new motto? We are we.
we are we. Yes. So, anyway, so today's episode is about HIV.
It is.
And a little genesis of this podcast, a couple months ago, I went to a very small birthday party for a friend, and people were discussing how negatively people were reacting to COVID, right? And one person said, well, they're acting like COVID is HIV. And I had to chime in there because I felt at this point they just didn't understand HIV and where it's at today comparatively. So I said, except for people actually die from COVID. Yeah. And they're not dying from HIV. So that's still out there, but like significantly less deaths from HIV. So I thought that we would give this podcast a lot of information on HIV, current treatments, things to do to not get HIV, beyond condoms, beyond abstinence. There are some things out there that we're going to talk about, and just give some statistics and show that HIV is not where we were in 1984 anymore. And the stigma around it kind of needs to go away. And people who have HIV, the stigma towards them needs to go away as well. So let's get some facts. We're going to do a whole science episode with real science people.
With
I'm
real
extremely
science for once.
excited about the real science and statistics in this. I joke about science, but I really do enjoy science a lot.
We both do.
Yes, we're both numbers
nerds,
people,
yes.
science nerds. So like,
I follow Science Geeks on TikTok. I'm that motherfucker.
yeah, I mean, I watch Science Channel all day long, but sadly, like they like do Bigfoot and stuff. Like, I don't know. I'm like, some of these science shows aren't really science.
It's
but
kind of like the Learning Channel. There's really not a lot of learning going on there anymore. But
no,
hey,
once Honey Boo Boo hit,
whatever.
TLC was no longer the Learning Channel. So,
Okay,
anyway.
one thing we want to say about the
Science.
I don't know if you want to hit that button
Oh,
again.
sure.
Just I know it makes you happy. Is that try though we might. Some of these stats are a little bit older, so I don't want to go into a super long rant about why people can't update their stats and give us more current numbers, like they've been working on a fucking pandemic or something. They didn't have other shit to do. Oh, well, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any excuses for it. I mean, a lot of my information came from the CDC and other supplemental HIV and AIDS websites.
Yeah,
so
mine like hiv.gov.
Yeah,
and they're still low. They're a few years old, but
so
like
2018 is about the average age of our stats. So,
but much better than you said than what people were thinking. 20. I have to do the math. 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes. So, let me kick us off.
All right.
Did you like the way I
She
really
snapped it around.
whipped it? You can't see it. I'm like whipping
So
us
dark
into
in here
Stat
too.
City. I really do have to get like a visual component to this. Okay, marinate on it. Anyways, in 2018, it says black/African American people, but we're just insert black at all times. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay. Because unfortunately, a lot of these are also U.S. stats.
Correct.
So I'm sorry. I did think about you. The rest of the world is just it was like so much more prevalent to find the U.S. stats for me, so I apologize. But 13%, black people count for 13% of the U.S. population, but 42% of the new HIV cases.
Wow. Okay.
And among all women, black women account for the largest share, being about 58% in 2018 again of the new diagnoses, and 14 times the rate of white women, and 5 times the rate of Latinos. So we can get into that more, but there is still a significant problem in the black community where I feel that we don't have a lot of information, don't receive as much of it. Well, that's a U.S. thing. We'll get into that too. But when you were telling me the story of the party, I remember I said, yeah, we absolutely should do a show about this, because as a straight woman, I feel like I don't hear a lot of the information either. I feel like there's a lot of information that you're privy to that just doesn't make it, and unless I was to search out for it, how would I know?
And I mean, I know that I didn't read your statistics, but just to add on top of that statistic of females, these are more than likely straight females.
Right.
Because it's a very minuscule number of possible HIV from in a female to female.
And I did read that in my stats, so I didn't. Thank you for clarifying. I did read that.
Yeah, so but it brings back a whole point. This is a large number of people who are not in the know about HIV still, even though it's been in the public consciousness in America since 1981.
Yeah.
So we're 40 years into it here in America.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to give you some history on it here in a minute.
And even in the South, so one more thing.
Yeah.
Regionally, the South accounts for the majority of blacks who are diagnosed. 63% of the new diagnoses of black people in the South.
In the South.
And this is important because we will talk about, the South, like it all gets into sex education. It all gets into education, period. And while the U.S. lags in a lot of areas overall, regionally, there are big differences as well.
Regionally, yeah. And a lot of, honestly, sex education in school districts typically are up to how the parents feel about the sex education. The South being a little more prevalent with religion preaching abstinence over any sexual.
Right.
So like a lot of times there's just no education going on, and a lot of times we both took sex ed, right? So like my sex ed didn't cover gay sex.
Come on now.
And like HIV was listed as an STD, not an STI. So like there's a major difference between like how it's perceived as well, because people really didn't want to talk about HIV. Like people don't want to talk about it. There's such a stigma behind it that no one wants to discuss it at all. So
yeah. Okay, so I'm good on my stats for now.
Okay,
I'll let you hit us with the science.
So I'm gonna go back in time. We don't have a sound effect for it.
We don't.
So I just said 1981 was when a few cases came about in the United States, in New York and California. But did you know that HIV has been around since the 1920s?
What?
100 years, people. We're talking 100 years.
And they're sure it was the same thing?
Yes,
okay.
Because how HIV became a thing was it crossed from humans, from chimps who have simian immunodeficiency virus, which is SIV. So they actually have it, and people who hunt and eat chimps. And so, like, eating, monkeys' brains, things like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they've traced back to where it's come from. And so from the 1920s, and this is, I don't want to put a big thing, but it's from the Congo, where they do have a lot of people who just still do eat monkey brains, even today.
Yeah.
And so their studies concluded that it took place in the 1920s in the Congo, and then made it into a major transport area in Kinshasa, which is in the Congo, which was a place for rivers, railways, so people were traveling in and out of that part of the country, and there was a high population of migrant and sex trade going on at the time in the 30s. And by the time the 30s happened, there was a case which they can now be attributed to HIV because it has to go backwards, right?
Right.
And then they were able to see that that's like by the 30s, it was coming out of Congo.
Okay.
They did find a man whose blood sample who was frozen. Somehow they were able to get their blood DNA sample from this person from 1959 that actually had HIV. Like it showed that they had HIV, and that kind of led them into this search for. So this is all science. These are all science people. I trust them more than I trust Ronald Reagan, and so and so like we really didn't see it here in the United States, and we didn't even know it was HIV in 1981 until people started having rare cancers and rare lung infections, which the doctors were like, how does this person get this?
Right.
And then found out that HIV, of course, causes, an immune problem.
Yeah.
So it creates things in your body where you could get these rare diseases. And that's how the stair step eventually became to actually saying HIV by 1982. And then by the end of 1982, September, around that year, they decided that it was no longer just gay. And so, the hemophiliacs could get it through blood transfusion, and heroin users could get it through heroin use sharing needles. So, I mean, that's pretty quick. That's a year. But, like, growing up, as a gay person, I was always teased about getting AIDS. I mean, HIV, really, people didn't talk about. They said AIDS more than HIV. But, like, I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Like a whole year. Like it only took a year for them to find out that it wasn't just a gay disease. Like it was said so hard.
It was not publicized that way.
No, like it was so hard ingrained into us that only gay guys actually got this. Like it was a gay male disease, and so it's it's a virus anyway, not even a disease. Anyway, so like you said, 2018 stats is what we have. So there were in 2018 there were 1 million. Almost 1,040,000 people living with HIV in the U.S., and in that year, almost 38,000 newly diagnosed cases with HIV. So HIV is still spreading. Like they said, about an average of 37 to 40,000 cases a year. So, and it goes into what puts into your stats and perspective of how many are Black males in the South, and then females in the South as well. So,
and it's kind of crazy. I'm gonna take us on a quick deviation from.
We always deviate.
We like to deviate from the stats, and because when I was doing the research, I came across myths that people have heard about that apparently still been around as recently for sure as like 2015, 2016, things that people still believe.
Okay.
That you can get it from a toilet seat. That you can get it from shaking hands. There are still people who, if somebody's diagnosed in their family, will not let them drink from the cups and the plate or use the plates in their house and have them on like paper cups and plates. Because they think they can get it from drinking from the same cup. That someone with AIDS coughing in the same room as you, and obviously this is before masks and everything,
right,
could give it to you. That taking a contraceptive pill means that you can't get it. I didn't know that one was still out in these streets.
Oh no, I have an underlined statement to stay in here.
Okay.
Later on, why I have to say that statement is why people still believe that out there in the streets.
And then obviously the most offensive and the one that you've probably heard the most, that it's a gay or African disease. So these are the things that are still out there that people.
And honestly, though, when you get your blood drawn to donate, they ask if you are a gay male. If you say yes, you're a gay male, they ask you the question, which is a ridiculous question. Have you ever had sex with a man since 1975? Which, that's the year I was born, so yes.
Right.
And yes. Like, what's
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous question. But also, a question is asked of women is if you had sex with a black male. Like, and I don't know if they've changed that. I think they've changed that, but like 20 years ago, that was a thing that was asked. Because I remember throwing a big fit because we had this blood drive at a workplace, and I would donate it because I care about human beings. But I really just wanted to see what my blood type was. And so I was complaining about it outside smoking, as I would. And then somebody else was like, yeah, and they asked, like, about black, if I had sex with a black, and I was just like,
Wow.
like, you have to test the blood, people. Like, even if you don't, even if you're not high risk of anything, your blood is tested before it's given to anybody.
Absolutely.
So there's no reason that everyone should be able to give blood. Yeah, let's just leave that.
I didn't. Well, let's not just leave it.
Okay.
Because I didn't until last year, I think it was. The years blur. For sure, within the last 2 years, when you and I were talking about it, didn't realize that in general, sexually active gay men are not really allowed to donate because of all these silly rules. Like, I was, it's just like one of those things you feel like couldn't possibly be a thing. So then you hear it and you're like, what?
Yeah. Well, even that, if the question is still not 1975, which is ridiculous, but even if I was celibate for 8 years, or, I had gotten out of a relationship where my husband passed away, so I never fell in love again. And you're asking me if I ever had sex, even if I hadn't had sex 10 years?
Yeah.
Like, that's my entire life. Have I ever had sex?
Right.
It's not.
Because it's almost like to make you feel like you shouldn't be having sex.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing.
It's
It's like, and so I don't donate ever. I won't until every state's I will not. Like, someone out there dying, sorry about you, boo, but you ain't getting my blood. There's 2 things I'll stand on: that blood donation and Chick-fil-A. That'll never die for me, never. Do you have anything else to say on those?
No, those were my only myths. Those were the most ridiculous ones that I kind of found and was just like, wow, this is really, people are still on that. Okay. Again, with our education.
And that's the whole thing. That everyone thinks as soon as, it's a stair-step situation. Like, you get HIV and then boom, you have AIDS and you're dead. Like, that's what people believe. Because that was a reality in the 80s.
That's what it was, yeah.
Most times we never heard anybody had HIV. We heard people were, dying of AIDS. And all these actors and people in the media that were, passing away, most gay men or secretly gay men, they were all passing away, but that's not the case today. And so, like, a part of this episode, I definitely wanted to give to HIV treatments, which are antiretroviral therapy.
Look at you saying it.
Our art. I can't say words a lot. There's not an effective cure because it's an immune virus. So there's, like, things with the immune system there's very few things that can be found with cures. Anyway, but with proper medication, you can control your HIV. Most people can get the virus under control within 6 months. And the amount of HIV in the blood is called a viral load. I don't know if we need to add a glossary at the end of all this, but we might. And HIV medicine can make the viral load very low, called viral suppression.
Okay.
And upon viral suppression, it means that you have less than 200 copies of HIV per milliliter of blood. So we know HIV, an immune system virus, it attacks your blood cells and then essentially duplicates itself into your system. And that's how it gets into your system. So taking your viral load down to the less than 200 copies, you get to the point where you can't even be tested positive for HIV. Because there's that much less in your system, and that's considered undetectable.
Which, can we pause very quickly? Another thing I didn't realize until maybe 3 years ago, one of the hosts of one of those Netflix shows.
That one.
Well,
Yeah.
Neither here nor there. Doing an interview, and the person was asking them about living with HIV. And said, well, I'm undetectable. And I was like,
right.
That's a thing? Again, things that because this is the thing. I like to think in general, I'm not a dummy. And I know a decent amount of things.
She's got TikTok, y'all. She ain't stupid.
Fuck you. But no, I mean, it's not like, all I do is read Star and Inquirer, for fuck's sakes. And I had never heard of it. I think a lot of these things don't make it into the mainstream at all.
Well, and I'm the same with you. I mean, honestly, I was in a long-term committed relationship, and when you're in a long-term committed relationship in gay world, you kind of cut off from all the things that you have to know. Like HIV was not something I was scared of. It was not something I was concerned with. Yes, the 20 years prior to that, it was definitely a concern every single time.
Yeah.
But like in a committed relationship where you know you're not sleeping with other people, like that's not something, you don't even get tested, you don't even care about things like that. That's in the back of your mind. So this coming up, a lot of these treatments, a lot of these medications are relatively new. And in that time, I was unaware as well until I became single again and started reading some people's profiles where they were saying undetectable. I'm like, oh, what's undetectable mean? So going out and finding it out. The main key to being undetectable is you effectively have no risk of transferring HIV.
Yeah. I was reading about that. I was like, that's awesome.
So it's like there's still a stigma behind people who have HIV, obviously. And in the dating world, people are still struggling with that, unfortunately, because other people are so scared of that, right? So, but if someone's undetectable, they're not going to transmit it to you anyway in most cases. Now, everything is not 100%, so don't take those words to us meaning everything's 100%. But, like, lose the stigma behind that. Yeah. Like, I'm going to be flat out, and I when I was talking about this episode, I'm like, I'm going to be completely honest. I have had sexual intercourse with people who are undetectable and have not been scared about that afterwards. I obviously get tested multiple times a year. We'll talk more about that later, but like I don't see that as a negative for a human being. Like saying you're born brown, I don't know. I guess people are out here saying they won't sleep with people of different races and stuff. So does it surprise me? No. But gay people, come on. Gay people, come on.
It seemed like you were about to have a moment. I was like, should I leave the room, you and the gay people?
No, I don't. No, it's fine.
I just had to say something slightly ridiculous. Give us a moment of levity.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So let's see. What else? Okay, so besides do you want to talk about how stupid we are in the U.S.? I mean, I'll phrase it differently. The lack of education and resources.
I feel like the education's available. It's the retaining of the education. Now, I understand you don't have to retain every bit of knowledge.
Right.
Because as a differently, I had learning disabilities. So, like, I learned differently. I didn't grow up at a time where learning disabilities existed. Like, if you had a learning disability and it was so prevalent, you were in special education classes. Was I that in second grade? Yes, I was. But that was a different school, and I was so far behind. But, like, with my learning disabilities, I could still learn.
Right.
I just couldn't write it. I couldn't memorize it, but I couldn't write it. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe more people need learning disabilities and be able to have a better education system. I don't know.
Maybe so. But I think, like, to go back to, so it's not even just having the information or having classes available for all, honestly, middle schoolers and high schoolers. Because, the kids are starting young. You got to start the knowledge young. But...
And I'm not going to say it's all the southern states, but we all at least know one person who had a kid in junior high. Come on.
Right. That we do.
So, like, sex ed's needed.
We all were marching around junior high. There was at least one person in overalls just 8 months pregnant.
Just 8 months pregnant.
But continuing on, I don't know. I'll let you speak for the white community in a minute. But for black people, there's still so much stigma around so many things. Like, so I'm trying to, like, bridge that without sounding like a really old woman.
You're trying to make a bridge and Polly. People aren't going to understand that reference.
And they aren't, but I know.
You know what I'm talking about.
No, I do.
That Disney movie starring Keisha Knight Pulliam.
Absolutely.
Remake of Pollyanna. Polly, check it out.
Polly.
Build a bridge.
You can't even find Polly anymore.
No.
Oh, anyways. But I'm trying to build a bridge. But, like, the thing is, if you go on here and you look at, if you read these stats and the problems, somebody scientific will say, well, it's a lack of access to things and poverty and blah, 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 blah. More importantly is, like, the culture around it. And specifically for Black people, like, it's still hard for Black men to be openly gay. Openly bi, absolutely forget it. Because if you say you're bi,
you're gay.
Absolutely, that's what Black people still think.
Yes.
And, you know, there's also this idea that, you know, like, what family's supposed to be, what sexual relations are supposed to look like. And there's a lot of ways in which people are becoming more open, and they're talking about being poly and pan and all these things, but there's so much repression, specifically in our community. That's the only one I can speak about because it's the only one I'm a part of.
Right.
That I think all of that leads to this idea of, you know, if I push the idea away that I could even get it, it'll never happen to me. I'll never go get tested for it. I know so many people who've never even thought to be tested for that. Because, you know, if you go to your doctor and you say, and you're a straight person, right? If you walk into the doctor and say, well, you know, I'd like to get tested. I broke up with somebody. I'd like to get tested. They'll ask you specifically. It's not like they're just going to run a full panel. You know what I mean? Of everything they got. They'll be like, well, you probably only need. Like, they're just going to pick and choose which things you might need. I know
which
you're
would
making
probably be what, like
chlamydia,
syphilis, and gonorrhea.
And that's, yeah. And it's almost like the HIV component is a separate thing that you have to request. So, I mean, I feel like there's so many aspects, there's so many reasons what make it harder for us to stay informed and to fully prepare ourselves. You know what I mean?
Which is so beyond me. So let's talk about that for a second, because there were a couple times during my long-term relationship that I was I was hospitalized. So I had a mini stroke in 2009. I was hospitalized for an entire week. I had no reason to have any kind of HIV or AIDS scare at that time, 3 years into my relationship. But in my head, I assumed that all the blood work that they would be doing on me would at some point pinpoint whether or not I was HIV positive.
Yeah.
And like, to me, and when you're going to see doctors normally, you get blood work done and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like, I just imagine that should be like not the first thing,
but it should be in the
things.
They're busy checking stuff off. You're like, why wouldn't they just check that off too?
In the things, because it's an immune virus.
Yeah.
So like, it can cause issues for so many. Like I said earlier, it was causing cancers that people weren't having anymore. Like, those things were coming up, and it's just like, why wouldn't that be a top? And maybe it is, and we just don't know. But I don't think it is.
It's not, and here's why. Because, you know, now they have all these portals, and so you go in after you get tested, and you see all the things that they checked and ran.
True.
And I have to have this quite often, kids, so I'm here to tell you, for the last 5-7 years, they ain't been checking none of that.
Yeah.
You have to specifically request it. Now, again, I realize I may be being treated different because all my paperwork says I'm straight. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? So that
there's still a bias that exists in the medical field. So yeah.
Absolutely. So anyways, those are my thoughts from that aspect. Your thoughts?
I mean, yes. I mean, I get it from your perspective, you know, the Black perspective. I feel like white people live in a separate pocket dimension, whereas Black people kind of have things where they're not worrying about pushing aside. White people have that it'll never happen to me syndrome.
Yeah.
Which is everything, right? It's gun control, it's all that things. These things will never happen to me.
Yeah.
They only happen to people in big cities. They only happen to people, and now we've just said they happen more in the South. I live in New York State. It ain't going to
Right.
happen to me. It's going to happen to someone in Alabama. So
Right.
we live in that, we have that kind of interdimension that like creates our white picket fences around our house that says we're safe in here.
Okay.
And that those things only happens. Like people only get shot in Chicago.
Mhm.
And for those that don't know, we're closest to Chicago's the biggest city.
Right.
But statistically, East St. Louis is worse. Anyway, love you, East St. Louis. Hi, family. But that's the whole thing. It's like we live in that pocket dimension where things don't happen to us. And that's why you always see people on the news, white people on the news, like, I never thought it would happen to me. I never thought my daughter would be kidnapped. Or I never thought I would kidnap my daughter and kill her myself. Like those things, seriously.
Yeah.
Those are like white people problems because we live with blinders on, and that's part of the reason why we can't understand. And when I say we, I'm excluding myself. We can't understand a black experience in America because it's not our problem.
Right.
And so a lot of people that's how we live. So yes, HIV is exactly one of those things. Do we know about syphilis and chlamydia and gonorrhea? Absolutely, because we've all probably had at least one of the three, and that's a big thing in white culture. Is like it's still shameful, but is it still shameful? Like I know
Yeah.
people who joke about the
Yeah, I was
STDs,
gonna say, I
STIs
don't
they've
think
had.
it's considered shameful anymore.
No, and
Gross.
I personally feel like there's no shame. Yes, I've had STIs before, but I also feel like in a sex positive way, we should be talking about it because if someone knows that I've had it, then they know they can get it.
Mhm.
And so therefore it becomes more human and more
Right.
relatable.
You're
so
like, it can happen to
it
you.
can happen to you. Check. Only two. But so that's the whole thing is like I feel like part of my job here as a podcaster, if it's my job, is to be relatable and to tell stories from my perspective. So
All right.
and that was a segue.
I figured, and I was like, so I was just standing back for the magic to happen.
Yes. So let's talk about PrEP. PrEP
Prep
is
me.
pre, which means before,
Mhm.
if you didn't know.
Thank you.
The extra E is exposure, coming into contact with HIV, and prophylaxis, which is the treatment to prevent the infection from happening. So that's what PrEP stands for. PrEP has been essentially around since 2012, and the users have increased by 1,700% since 2012. This is also a 2018 statistic, so still 3 years old, but an average increase of 55% per year.
Wow.
If you consistently take it correctly, which is every single day at the same time, it is 92 to 97% effective of reducing your risk of HIV, whether or not you use a condom. So if you use a condom and you're on PrEP, it's like birth control.
You
good
know, I
to
was
go.
thinking that was making that thing like every girl that's like on birth control is like, okay, no, you also need to use a condom because I'm trying to figure out how to get over 100.
Right, like that statistic. And that's the thing is like PrEP is essentially, I mean, medical doctors, you can excuse my ignorance, but it is essentially like a birth control for HIV.
Yeah.
So it's to make your blood system not able to have HIV
Transmit,
enter
yeah.
into it.
Receive
so
it. Yeah.
receive it, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm gonna make it relatable.
Yeah.
I'm on board. I'm ready for this class. Give me more.
So there are two major types of PrEP. I read that there's multiples, but I could not see multiples in my search. I could only come across two.
Mhm.
I only make the distinction between two of them because two of them, one of them is not for a certain type of person, and one of them are. So I will say Truvada is effective for all people, including people who are assigned female at birth.
Okay.
And it's safe to take during pregnancy and while breastfeeding.
Oh.
While Descovy, which is the PrEP that I'm on, it is not shown to be effective for people assigned female at birth. So there's not enough studies to prove that it is effective. So so typically if you're a female wanting to get on PrEP, you would go the Truvada route. Obviously, talk to a doctor. Don't go in and say, Bob said I need a Truvada.
Right.
Because you have to be tested for HIV, obviously, before you can be on PrEP, because it's not going to be effective for you if you're HIV positive.
Right.
So, PrEP, this was my highlighted, underlined thing that I had to say because I know I have to say it. PrEP does not protect against STIs like gonorrhea, chlamydia, or syphilis, and does not prevent pregnancy.
Right.
So I know that all these commercials have to say the 40,000 things that it'll do to you, but it's something that like we have to say. And you already said it. You've already said part of it, but I just wanted to.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things like when you're reading instructions on the back of like a shampoo bottle or something, and then it says rinse. It's like it's got all these things. You're like, did you really have to put that on there? Yes, we did. We had to make it clear
because
so
we have people with gorilla glue on their head.
Absolutely.
2021.
So you gotta tell us what it doesn't work on.
Absolutely.
All right,
So,
hit me, give me more.
So fun. Let's see. We're gonna give a shout out to Mr.com. That's MISTR.com. That is the system I use for getting PrEP. Really, you get your PrEP for free at Mr.com. Essentially, there's no doctor's office, no needles, no paperwork, and it has free delivery. You're asking me, how does this happen, Bob? Because that's not realistic in the world.
Tell us more.
Go to Mr.com and check it out, and so you can see all the details. But essentially, you do an at-home kit, which I just did one yesterday. I've been on PrEP for them since December, and so this is my 3-month checkup. Every 3 months, you have to do another checkup to make sure you're still HIV negative. It also tests for all STIs as well.
Nice.
And also tests your sorry. I was thinking of something.
You went blank.
I went blank completely. It tests all for STIs and for HIV. And so you do this at-home kit, which, well, let's discuss it, right? So a little blood drawn for HIV, a little pee for stuff that might be happening in your pee area.
Okay.
A little swab for the back of your throat for things that might be happening in the back of your throat area.
Okay.
And this is the one that Joy doesn't enjoy, but a little rectal swab for things that might be happening in your rectum, which you can also use for a vaginal swab as well. So but I think it depends on the person. And since I use Descovy, and that's through the Mr. I feel like it's more geared towards gay males, but I could be wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, Mr.com. And so that's cool. You do all that. You get your test results back. You really just fill out a thing. It's all online. I have to have a doctor's visit, which is a virtual visit through Zoom. It's very short, brief. They just check, how you're doing and if you're on it and like your stats and ask you a couple questions. Like I told you before, it was literally the quickest doctor's appointment I have, but that's only because I live in the state of Illinois. So it's different for each state. Some states don't have to have it. Some states you do. And then they send you your PrEP.
I mean, honestly, I don't know why everybody wouldn't do this.
I don't either.
Because you had me at the test itself will not only test you for HIV, but all STIs. Why would, like, as we just got through saying, this doesn't happen normally. And given your insurance or not situation, it could also cost you a lot of money to go through a regular doctor's office to do it. It seems like, they figured out how to make it as easy as possible for the user.
And acknowledging that there's still a stigma and going into a doctor's office and asking for an HIV test may be hard for some people. Raising a hand over here, like it's still something. Yeah, I have to think about it, but like, as fast as my doctors retire and I have to get a new one, like I'm tired of having conversations with them over and over again. And so, literally, of how deep into conversation would have, like, I get a text message from them every month, like, has anything changed? No. Okay, we're sending it out. Like, I just respond no, and I have another shipment coming in like 2 days. Yeah. So like right now, like I said, I'm in my 3rd month, so I have to do I had to do my testing. I have to get all my results back, which are less than a week, and which sometimes are shorter than some HIV tests. Just to be honest,
Yeah.
like sometimes you have to wait longer depending on your doctor, and it's quick, easy, and like it says, free, because a lot of things are free based on if you have insurance or you don't have insurance. They have it worked out where they can cover that. So I'm like Mr.com. I know you hear me talk about it all the time, how amazing it is, because I do think it's amazing. It's an amazing system, just because I feel like more people should try it out, just because it's if you do have the feelings like you don't want to talk to a doctor about it, or you don't have insurance and you can't afford it, definitely check out Mr.com.
Absolutely. I'm on board. I mean, you know that I'm already on board.
Oh, yes.
I know that sounded a little lackluster, but as somebody who couldn't wait for them to have birth control online and not have to go and deal with these judgmental ass old nice doctor people.
Doctors. Medical professionals who don't act like you have
Listen,
a vagina.
Results may vary based on your race and also location in the United States of America. But I would suggest that you're like, what? Different results? Doctors are different to different people? No. But yeah, I do think it's amazing, and I think everybody should go to Mr. with no E.
No E.
MISTR.com. Awesome.
All right, so we gave a lot of information. Episodes
so much
obviously
info.
have been longer than most episodes.
We're both doctors at this point?
I
we're
mean,
PhDs.
Seriously, yeah.
PhDs.
Yeah, we're like...
But the kind of PhD that would like put doctor, their name, and then PhD at the end.
Plus whatever degrees. We have like a BA. I want to put my associate's degree on there just because, like, and also I am also a minister. So
I have to add in my Reverend Doctor.
And I'm a Reverend Doctor.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, I hope that you guys find this informational, and I really hope that this helps you think about HIV in a different way, and maybe gain some knowledge, and maybe will treat somebody differently that has HIV, and maybe you can have more conversations about HIV. Hey, did you know this episode was about HIV?
I didn't, but thank you.
And remember that to be beautiful and natural is the birthright of every woman. And I wish you all loads and loads of loveliness and good luck.